my name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. If you like sewing and DIY videos, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I am starting a new series called Sewing with Scraps, where I take fabric scraps from a previous upcycle and try to turn it into something wearable. Since it is AAPI Heritage Month, I thought it would be perfect to start with the fabric scraps from my Lunar New Year upcycle that I made a few months ago. If you saw that video, you'll know that I turned my grandma's vintage cheongsam and a thrifted curtain into this matching two-piece set, and in today's video, I'm gonna use the fabric scraps from this project and turn it into this patchwork skirt, so let's get started. This is all I have left from that project. There is barely any fabric from the cheongsam, but I still have a decent amount of the curtain. Since I only have a very limited amount of the cheongsam fabric, I think the only way I can make this work is by patchworking the fabric together to make a large enough piece that I can work with. I definitely want to make a mini skirt, so I went on Pinterest and I found these inspiration photos. I'm pretty sure I'm only going to have enough fabric to make a patchwork piece for the front, so I will have to make the back of my skirt with just the curtain material. I've actually had this quilt pattern pinned for quite a few months now, so I'm going to use it as the base for my design. I'm starting with a 2.5-inch orange square, and then I cut out 4 1-inch squares from the curtain. I wanted to quickly mention that I did iron on lightweight interfacing on all of these pieces just to add a little bit of stability. I'm placing the smaller squares right sides facing and matching up the corners. I'll sew along these diagonal lines that I drew earlier with an air erasable marker, and this is what the square should look like now. Now I'm going to carefully clip off the corners to reduce any additional bulk. Next step is to give it a good press, and you should have something that looks like this. Following the same steps, I made 4 more and sewed them together. This is going to be the base of my patchwork piece, and I'm also going to be adding these rectangular white pieces. You can really see the pattern coming together here. Then I just continue to add on more blocks until I have a piece that is large enough for the front of my skirt. I am going to self-draft the pattern for the front of my skirt because I did find a few free ones online, but a lot of them have darts which I don't want to add to my patchwork piece, and I also found a bunch that just weren't quite the right shape. This is the pattern I drafted, and here is the fabric cut out. As you can see, this was cut on fold. Moving on to the back. For the back of the skirt, I'm going to be using this free pattern that I found on Mood Fabrics, and I'll make sure to link it down below. Here is the pattern traced out in a size 8, and here is the fabric cut out. I'm gonna go ahead and sew the dart, and following the same steps, I made the mirrored piece. I'm placing these pieces right sides facing and sewing together from this point to the hem, leaving the top open for the zipper. This is what it should look like now with this top section left unsewn, and next step is to sew in the invisible zipper. Now I'm placing my front piece right sides facing, and I'll sew together along the side seams. I went ahead and tried on the skirt, and it is a little bit too big on me, so I'm going to make a small adjustment, which I will show you now. This here is the original side seam where the front and back patterns line up, and on this side you can see that the first adjustment I made was to move the side seam of the front over, taking in the skirt slightly. The reason I only adjusted the front side seam was because I was actually really happy with how the back was fitting me, but even after this adjustment, the skirt was still a little bit too big along the hips, so I went ahead and marked out a new side seam. Here is the skirt now with the adjustments made on both sides. Next step is to finish the waist. I went ahead and made a lining with a thrifted bedsheet, and I'm pinning it right sides facing along the waistline. As always, I make sure that the side seams line up, and I carefully work my way around. I'll sew this together, and this is what the skirt should look like at this point. Here is a close-up, and I also pressed the seam allowance towards the lining, and I understitched it in place. Moving on, I'm going to sew the lining to the zipper. I'm sandwiching the zipper between both layers that are right sides facing, and I'm pinning it in place along the zipper tape. I'll sew this together and repeat on the other side. This is what it should look like now with the lining sewn to the zipper, but you can see here that the bottom section of the lining is still left unsewn. I'm going to sew my lining pieces together, but only from this point to the hem. I'm not fully sewing the lining together because I want to leave a small opening so that I can use it to turn the skirt to the right side later. Here is the skirt, and you can see that small opening in the lining. I'm going to finish the hem next, and I'm taking my lining layer and shell layer and placing them right sides facing, and then reaching through the opening and pulling the fabric through. I'm making sure to match the center back seams and pinning in place. This is probably the most confusing part in the entire tutorial, but I carefully work the fabric through, making sure I don't accidentally rip the opening in the lining. It is a little bit tricky since the skirt isn't able to lay flat, but I'm just pinning the hem of the shell to the hem of the lining right sides facing. This section is sped up, but I'm being very careful as I continue to work my way around. I'm also making sure to line up the side seams and that none of the layers are twisted or bunching. It's gonna look and feel really weird, but now that I have the hem completely pinned, I'm going to sew this together. This is what the skirt should look like at this point. Next, I'm going to find the opening in the lining again and very carefully work the fabric back to the right side. This is a trust the process kind of situation, and I promise eventually it'll start looking like a skirt again. This is definitely the more complicated version of hemming the skirt. You can also just hem both layers separately, but I wanted to make sure that all of the raw edges of my patchwork were contained. Here is the skirt turned to the right side, and you can see how all of the raw edges are neatly hidden. Next step is to give the hem a good press, and we are so close to being done. I'm turning the skirt inside out so I can finish sewing the lining, which I decided to hand sew together, and look at how nice and clean it looks on the inside. Last step is to add a hook and eye to the top of the zipper, which I hand sewed on, and here is the final skirt. I've always loved patchwork, but I think this design turned out so cute. I love that I have another matching piece, and I think it also looks so cute styled with these different white tops. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I still have a little bit of fabric left over from the curtain, so let me know what else I should make. I will be posting more photos of the skirt on my Instagram, so make sure you're following me there at Little Toe. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this upcycle, and as always, thank you so much for watching.